Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Evergreen School District Board of Directors workshop. I want to remind people that when we have a workshop, we don't have citizen comments. We've received a number of letters from both parents and teachers, and they've been received by the board, and we are all individually taking a look at them. So I'll turn things over to Superintendent Merlino to start the workshop.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. We are actually going to go walk through a PowerPoint tonight. It's similar to the one that was released to the community this afternoon, and Julie Tumulty will kind of lead that conversation. I'll go ahead and let Julie share the screen, and I'll say a few words at the beginning, and then we'll go from there. The first one says reopening school fall of 2020. I think, there we go. Okay, so what we kind of recapping a little bit, on the 11th, the board approved a reopening plan as required by Washington State and OSPI. We have been talking over the summer. I guess I would repeat again, I think that almost every Tuesday since probably June, maybe May, the board, myself, and others have been participating in meetings, having conversations about the reopening plan, kind of following what's happening on a day-to-day basis. On a weekly basis, I meet with other Clark County superintendents. The last few weeks, we've been also meeting with Dr. Melnick from County Health as we come up with the recommendations. Everyone knows by now that the recommendation was made to have remote learning as our primary means of structuring our plan for this fall. We spent a lot of time in the spring and over the summer looking at surveys from staff, from parents. What did we do well? What could we improve on? And tonight you'll hear some more in-depth look at schedules and school engagement, student engagement teams, things like that. Ultimately, the county superintendents worked together before the State Department of Health had created what they call their decision tree around kind of a decision tree for how do you come back to school. The governor had a phase plan. Each county was at various levels, various phases. Clark County currently is in phase 2, and we've been operating in phase 2 under the idea that we would have groups of 5 or less in following the appropriate safety protocols. We actually this week continue the second week of our summer school program. That's operating, I think, in 11 of our elementary schools. In OSPI had guidelines that they put out in terms of the summer school program. It was really nice to see some of the pictures and some of the comments from the kids and from the staff with respect to that occurring. But ultimately, again, the board last week approved a plan that would have us in a 2.0 model, remote model, and we plan on, and they'll dive into this a little bit, bringing kids in, honestly, once the Department of Health put their information out, they kind of had more of a look at what's the transmission rate in the counties around the state. Are you over 75 per 100,000? Are you between 50 and 75 or below 25? In all 3 of those levels, they have what level is the county in, and are these things in place with respect to safety procedures in a building? And then on the far side, is there testing capability? Is there contact tracing capability in the county? We had assurance from Dr. Melnick that we met all of those guidelines. So basically, we have from the beginning been talking about bringing kids in groups of 5 or less, even though we're primarily in a remote learning for kids with unique needs, whether that's related to special needs, homeless students, they're further away from justice, students further away from justice, and then also early learners. So that's kind of what we've been following all along. And you can see in that 4th bullet where I think online you can actually click on the decision tree and it will tell you what does the Department of Health have. We've also worked on making certain that we have technology ready from the beginning. We allowed a lot of our students, if they chose to maintain their devices over the summer. We're working hard on coming up with how we're going to deliver meals. We're working within the transportation system. Funding is potentially impacted this year. So we're building a model that will allow us to run bus routes and bring in small groups of students, even socially distanced on the buses. The last bullet with respect to equity, you all on the board are aware of the hiring of Clarissa Hightower in the Executive Director of Equity and Inclusion position. We have moved forward with a lot of the training. The last 2 days, I think we had 160 staff members trained on courageous conversations. And what we're really trying to do is make equity, the whole equity conversation, part of the curriculum, part of the instruction that we do on a daily basis. We're lucky to have Clarissa leading us, and we spent a great couple days in that training. For more specifics on what the plan actually looks like, I'm going to turn it now over to Julie and let her go to the next few slides.
All right, thank you, Mike. So we went over some of this last week, and we just want to dig into a little bit deeper and show you some specifics. We'll be revisiting the attendance and engagement plans. Jay will be talking about special ed. We'll dig into the remote learning, specifically what students' daily schedules look like. Talk a little bit more about material distribution, technology, and how students can prepare for school and be ready to go for school on day 1, September 1st. So first to Clarissa.
Okay, yes, so we will be taking attendance daily as instructed by OSPI. And the way we're going to be doing that is students will need to log in either via their Chromebook. As soon as they log in, it logs them into ClassLink. And if they're, are choosing not to use a district device, they can go to the ClassLink portal on Evergreen's homepage and log into ClassLink there. And what happens is that it is logged in Classroom. It's a tool that teachers have access to. And they will be, at the end of each day, checking for secondary, their first period class students, and looking to see if they've logged in through ClassLink. If they have, they are marked present. For elementary school teachers, they will do the same at the end of the day. They don't have periods, so they'll just do that for their entire class to see if they've logged in. And we are making sure that we keep in mind that students will be accessing the learning, beyond the regular school day. And so when teachers are looking to mark students present or absent, they will be looking at a 24-hour period. And so if they're checking this at 3 p.m., they want to look for activity as logged by ClassLink from 3 p.m. to 3 p.m. So that's a level of equity that we're making sure that we apply to attendance, being very understanding to students' individual needs at the family level. The next piece is linked to attendance. And so when we have students who we feel as though are needing additional support, we've created a process for students to go through that begins with the teacher. So the teacher will be marking the attendance on a daily basis and just checking within that same tool of Classroom. They can see, what apps and things that students are accessing. And so teachers will be taking a look at that on a weekly basis for participation. But if they're noticing a student is not engaging, they're not present for a day, and they're going to initiate some intervention, such as doing a phone call home, sending a postcard, reaching out to the students, special education teacher if they happen to be a student on IEP, or the ELL teacher if they happen to be a language learner, just making sure that it's not the content that the student is having trouble with first. And they'll do that for that week. And then at the end of the week, the teacher will mark participation for the full week in addition to having had marked attendance, as well as the effort shown on the student part. And what that means is that, has the student attempted themselves to reach out for support, right? And what that looks like. Have they been interacting in a way outside of the synchronous learning? Maybe they've been emailing their teacher in some kind of way to show that they indeed are, trying, they're putting forth that effort. So all that will be marked on a weekly basis, and that's going to be sucked in, if you will, to our system, and then spit out in a report that our student engagement team will then have access to. And they will be looking at, okay, the teacher has been implementing some initial interventions, and now we need to go a step further because this student is not responding to the teacher level interventions. And so this student engagement team, made up of counselor, administrator, transition coaches, students, people who are very used to supporting our students in an additional kind of way, will look at reaching out further to that family and assessing what the need is. And so on the next slide, there is a rubric, if you will, that the student engagement team will use to then calibrate what level of support the student needs, okay? So if the teacher has been doing the initial outreach, if you will, and marking the participation and attendance and effort, the student engagement team will then look at that student's current grade. They will collaborate and consult with the teacher to see what the teacher's concern is, as well as reach out to the parent to see what their concern is. And they'll put together a preliminary plan to hopefully increase the engagement within that week. If indeed by the end of that week, that plan has not been successful for students, they will reconvene and consider adding the student to one of the small groups that will receive in-person support. And so it is a tiered system, if you will, that students move through with different levels, the third level or the final level being added to a small group to come into the building to receive in-person support. The student engagement teams from there will then put together a schedule of some sort for that student to receive the support that they need. Some students may not necessarily need academic support. They might actually be needing some in-person support from a counselor or a transition coach. And so all of that will be considered in putting the plan together for when the student is on campus to receive those supports.
All right, thank you, Clarissa. Jay is up.
So when in talking about special education, I'll address some high-level things that is applicable to all students. As is the reality with special education, always there's unique circumstances that IEP teams will need to address related to individual student and individual student needs. The biggest thing, though, in relationship to special education is that any student with an IEP will be able to access and be provided all aspects of the remote learning 2.0 program that will be discussed here after I'm done, and also any of the engagement team work that Clarissa just talked about. Through special education process this year, students will receive the services outlined in their IEPs. In the past, when we had the closure and we were responding to the emergency situation, there was a situation where guidance came down from the state that said that students were implementing what we called continuous learning plans. A significant difference now is that the IEPs in their entirety will need to be implemented. And so that means if a student isn't making progress in the remote learning program, IEP teams will need to meet and discuss what additional services may be required for the student to access. Students will receive special education services through the remote distance learning methods. In addition to that, and in circumstances where all health and safety conditions can be met, we would and can be bringing in individual students or small groups of students to provide in-person services, which we will plan to do through the IEP process, and that decision would be made because a student isn't benefiting in any way or progressing in the remote learning program. So Julie, there's a So IEP managers will be monitoring student progress. They will be connecting with families. It's important, the partnership and collaboration we have with families is hugely important, and supporting the family in addition to the student is a huge focus. And then where we need to address more service or different service or even in-person service, teams will be connecting and making arrangements for students to have consistent scheduled services daily and weekly.
Question, if you permit it, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have ways to let parents of kids on IEPs express a preference about how they're contacted? Phone, email, SMS, that kind of thing?
So typically, IEP managers are the primary point of contact for families, and we will engage with our IEP managers to ask them to do the same things they typically do. And so what I mean by that is they connect with their families and they answer those questions, and the responses of the 3,600-ish kids, all of those. So we will do what we do and work with our IEP managers and be able to communicate with parents' preferences.
Thanks.
All right, we are going to briefly go over Remote 2.0 again, and much of this we went over last week, but just to remind you and those listening that when the teaching and learning team started creating and working on Remote 2.0, we gathered a lot of feedback about this, and feedback from the community, feedback from parents, feedback from students, feedback from staff. So there's a lot of work and thought gone into this program. The things that really we want to get better at that we heard the feedback on was creating clear expectations. What does the weekly expectations look? What are the assignment expectations? What are grading expectations? Consistency of practice across the level, across grade levels, across schools. Clear expectations for whole group and small group teaching. Prioritize learning of content. Communication of what exactly mechanisms and expectations of how we are communicating, what platforms we're using. Clear expectations and building relationships with students and families. We have a strong social emotional connection and first 2 weeks of lessons that we're building with students. Social emotional well-being. Feedback. So in our grading guidance, it also includes feedback expectations that we need a lot of communication back and forth between teachers and students. Grading clarity and consistency, alignment across teams and system, flexibility for families. So when we look at the schedule, we'll talk more about what flexibility and what that looks like, which is similar to what Clarissa was talking about with attendance. Balance between live classes, synchronous, and on-demand or asynchronous. Provisioning for our unique learners, and a common set of tools and apps that limit the places teachers and students have to go to get the learning. So last week we looked at this. This is the guidance that teachers were provided, which talks about our modified scope and sequence, how we are condensing the content so that we are really focusing on the priority standards. Teachers and staff will be getting operational guidance as well as instructional guidance. What are the things we expect every teacher to do in terms of the collaboration, communication, grading, supplies, and then instructional guidance setting the frame so that students get a common experience in terms of instruction across the system. And then how we communicate. So at the very bottom, how we're communicating schedules, how we're communicating the learning design within our system, and then how we're communicating out to teachers, from teachers to parents. So in the schedules, what we'll see is color-coded sections of live time. Live means that teacher and classmates will be together on a Google Meet sharing the learning. It could be a class meeting, opportunity to connect with teacher and classmates, a content lesson, working together on a task, student-student collaboration, debrief or discussion about the learning. So that's when we're talking about whole class and teacher. On demand is work that the teacher has prepared for the students. So on that, it could be a pre-recorded video lesson, could be working on assignments or projects, having time to ask teachers or classmate questions. And then also this might include time where the teacher can pull in small groups of students or individual students and meet the needs of them in a time that's built into the schedule, but that's really prioritized for students. And then Wednesday is the whole day is on demand, as teachers are going to be given that day to do their planning, their professional development, their teamwork, and then also student engagement time that Clarissa was speaking of. So the first schedule is a typical elementary schedule. So this is from the view of a student. What would a student do? So if we look at that, a student would get prepared for school on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. They will have specialists, so students will have PE and music specialists. They're going to have time with their teachers. So the green block is the live time, so the whole class and teacher. What the schedule you'll notice is the alternation of live and then the green, yellow, which is the live, and then the asynchronous or the on-demand time. We know and we heard from parents that we don't want students sitting in front of a computer for 6 hours straight. So it's very deliberate in the schedule to give some time where they're on with their classmates and then they get a break. And they're on with their classmates and then they get a break. And then Wednesday, again, is on-demand time. So that's a typical student elementary schedule. Middle school and high school will look very similar to each other. They're running on a 6-period day. And we did the same thing of going live on demand. So we're switching between screen time and then a break from screen time and a break from screen time. And again, we heard that loud and clear from parents and students that 3 hours straight on a computer, 4 hours straight is too much. And so using that feedback created this schedule. The high school schedule, you'll notice, does not look different. There is some schedules on our website for Henrietta Lacks, Legacy, and Cascadia Tech, as their schedules are slightly different since Henrietta Lacks works on a 7-period day. So theirs is going to look a little bit different and include their advocacy time. Cascadia runs a little different, and then Legacy also. So those are posted or will be posted shortly on our website. Okay. The other part that I wanted to talk about just in terms of the remote learning is a big part of our system and our package of getting materials in the hands of kids. It's really important that not everything is tech. It's not all digital. We want textbooks in the hands of kids, library books, their classroom sets of books, their reading level books, hands-on manipulatives and classwork. So we're creating systems that will be able to get materials back and forth from students. So we will have drop-off and pickup systems at school, but then also utilizing our bus systems to have drop-off and pickup points, points of contact that people can come and get their materials. So trying to find as many ways as possible to get materials in the hands of kids. Brian, you're up for technology.
Okay, if you remember last spring, we felt really good about getting students computers as quick as possible. One of the other things we also learned was how to support students and families as they work with the device. Our goal is much different this year. We're hoping on the very first day of school, kids will have computers. They will know their passwords, their login, their device will be working. School, you might have received, the parents across the district are receiving surveys right now and calls, making sure that the tech part of the learning is ready. We've really built the whole support system around tech forms. The student can find those right on their Chromebook. You've heard about ClassLink mentioned. But when they go into ClassLink, right on the ClassLink page, there's a place where the form's at, the EPS tech form, a couple different places on Chromebook. Parents can bookmark it. And then, as we've said before, our goals for 24-hour turnaround. So if there's a problem, we don't have techs in the middle of the night, but our techs are out at school every single day. And this is a school-based tech support. We know things work best in our district when schools are supporting students and families. So IT has a part of it. If you have a broken computer, IT will have some computers at the school where you can go get them, but it'll all be school-based. As well, we have some documents, just frequently asked questions. Last year, we discovered that a lot of families and students were having the same challenges over and over and over. So we're hoping that some of those problems have already been solved and figured out, and if not, there's some frequently asked questions. As far as devices, we have the Chromebooks and then the hotspots. You're good. So the web filtering, obviously we're just as concerned about student safety in an online environment. We use a web filtering system called Relay, and it is live. So it really is focused on self-harm. It is seeing what the student is typing. And then if there's concerns, then it goes to the dean of students or to an administrator, someone at school, a counselor, and then we can operate right from there. So that's how the web filtering works. And then the last thing is student data privacy. We always assume everybody knows this, but there are data sharing agreements and all student data and everything is confidential. So when they're online, they're just with their classmates or just with their teacher.
All right, thank you, Ruben. And then just one thing we really want to tell parents and the community is how to get started. So what do they need to do to be prepared for school to start September 1st? Brian mentioned it. We want everyone to have a working Chromebook, a working charger, and a login. We also are sending out a lot of information, and parents need a family email address and family access. So if there are parents out there that are not getting emails from Evergreen Public Schools, that they need to check that. We want students to make sure 6th grade student passwords were reset. So as of yesterday, so they need to go in and make sure that they get their new password processed and ready to go. And then daily, the week at a glance schedules will be posted for students on the school website. So we've had parents ask, how do I coordinate my schedule? What should we do if we're not at home to help my student? And we really want to push parents to that week at a glance that will help them see what the week looks like and be able to follow it. Google Classroom will have updates daily. Students should be logging on daily. When students show up to class, we want them to be prepared. So just, do you have your paper? Do you have pencils? Are you prepared to start your learning? Being on time is always great to start learning, so you're there when your community building starts. And we know learning from home can be a little hectic, and so finding a location with the least amount of distractions. Additional supports that we just want to remind everyone that are still available, even though we are in remote learning, student meals are available. So they're available at neighborhood schools. You can pick up breakfast and lunch and multiple meals in a school. If there's a family that has kids at different levels of school, they can go to just one school and get all their student meals. So if I have a student who is in middle school, high school, and elementary, I can visit just one of those schools and pick up meals for all my students. Our family and community resource centers will be open, so those are still available to help and assist families and students. And we are coordinating with youth-centered community partners to offer daycare and day camps at a few of our schools. So that's an exciting piece. So next steps, we're going to be pushing out more information in the next couple weeks, some tech readiness information. School schedules for students, student schedules will be sent out soon with their teacher assignments. And school offices are open as of today. So as people are having questions and they need help, we do want them to go to their school, but they can always call the district office as well. And then Mike mentioned earlier, we'll be following the Department of Health guidelines on when to move to a hybrid and follow that decision tree.
Yeah, I think we talked about that previously, but there have been conversations with the Department of Health, Dr. Melnick, from the perspective of transmission rates. And I think you'll see a lot of the county districts following the same, basically looking at where the transmission rate is when we get to the 21st of September. Every week, the county updates the number of positive cases per 100,000 residents. And the reason that we would look at that the 21st is that's 2 weeks after the Labor Day weekend. And then it's really kind of looking at 3-4 weeks of consistency at a certain level or even declining rates. From the county health officer's perspective, he views moving elementary to hybrid at that point where you've had 4 consecutive weeks in the moderate or low range and the trends moving in the right directions to go to more of a hybrid model. Well, we've talked about having 5 kids in at a time. The hybrid model would be more looking at numbers of students on a two-day-a-week schedule. We certainly will watch the trends, and then we're not jumping into anything overnight. There'll be plenty of conversation and communication if it looks like we're moving in the direction of making that a possibility. And it looks like that's the last slide, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So what I would like to say is, first of all, hello to Julie Bocanegra. I see her in her room. I appreciate the work that so many people have done to put into the schedules, the surveys, the student engagement teams to have something in place to identify students that we need to find and bring in or support in any way that we can. I appreciate the time that's going into the technology. You've seen some districts that are, delaying the opening of school a few weeks. I feel like we're in a good position to move forward. We've also talked a lot about reaching out to our staff. I think I've talked in other meetings. Our enrollment that we see, that first count date is September 4th. The first day of school is September 1st. The first count date is September 4th. And we have to have contact with the student in order to be able to count that student. So we're already starting to reach out to families and making sure that we don't just have them on our enrollment lists without any kind of communication or conversation, and then we wait till the 4th, find out that they've left or they're not remaining with us for whatever reason. We periodically, I know I do, I'm sure others do, will get an intent to homeschool from parents. In each of those situations, we make sure that the principal just reaches out to make sure that they understand the program that we have available. We need to market ourselves. We offer a program that's going to be great for our students. There's no question about that. This isn't ideal. We all are aware of that, but I really feel like we've done a great job of putting something in place. Jay's working with the special ed families and just across the board. So I'm happy with where we're at, and also happy to answer, all of us are happy to answer any questions that you might have based on the presentation, or any questions you might have. I see everyone's muted, so that means we just move on. No, there we go.
Victoria was speaking.
Victoria, there we are, Victoria.
Thank you, Rob. Could you address, we've had a lot of input from parents and staff alike, and I know that the staff were definitely wanting the remote learning model, which of course is what's recommended for students at this point. When teachers are in the school, in their classroom, can you talk about some of the air quality issues that have come up, just so we have some closure as to what the reality is about that? I don't know who's the right person, maybe Sue, I don't know.
Maybe Clarissa would take that one.
So we've been working with our engineers to look at our existing systems. Fortunately, we have recently upgraded several sites with HVAC. So we've kind of looked at our standard practice, which is the ongoing preventive maintenance of all the HVAC equipment, making sure our startup checklist, we go through control sequences and make sure everything's operating, do our routine filter changes, kind of the normal stuff. But in addition to that current practice, we've implemented several additional strategies to help minimize the spread of COVID-19 through the air. We've increased our filter size to a MERV 13 where we can. That's just a denser filter material so that not as much particles can get through. We are running all of our HVAC systems in occupied mode. The week before school starts, we've actually, with summer camps and other programs, we've had it on now. We're doing a 2-hour extended pre-occupancy flush with outside air and exhaust every day prior to occupied hours. And we're looking at offsetting that with peak demand so that when everything comes on in the morning, it's peak electrical demand. So we may potentially move some of that to end of day as well. We've increased our outdoor air ventilation to reduce the amount of recirculation going on inside the occupied spaces. And then we also monitor with our BAS, our building automation system, to make sure that all the air handlers are bringing in enough outside air and removing the exhaust as they're designed to do. So we've been following ASHRAE's guidance, which is part of CDC and the World Health Organization recommendations as far as what we're doing with our HVAC systems.
And I guess I would also add that I think the main things we do is face coverings and social distancing. And I think it's great that we're doing all these things and we're making sure that our HVAC systems are in place. But maybe Jay can speak a little bit about the health, from the health perspective. I think the main things that we've heard in all the meetings are wash your hands, keeping things clean, social distancing. So any protocols that we have in our buildings will be followed strictly from whether it's OSPI guidelines, Department of Health guidelines, CDC guidelines. Anything to add to that, Jay?
No, I mean, well, I guess health screenings, attestations, social distancing requirements, face masks. There's trainings related to that Janae and HR have had folks go through. Recognition of symptoms, consultation with the Department of Health, all of these, and specific people in each building designated to ensure and enforce these things. In addition to the professional's responsibility to know and understand the requirements and abide by them. Implementing all the precautions we can as recommended by the Department of Health, Labor and Industries, and OSPI to ensure safety for staff and students.
And then for staff that may have some underlying medical conditions that have a more challenging situation, how is that going to get handled?
So I can speak from my perspective, and Janae can add in, I think. The accommodation process that's available for staff related to ADA or other related health condition issues is the process that will be implemented. And so if somebody is eligible for an accommodation, that accommodation will be provided as long as it enables them to continue to perform the functions of their work.
What is the procedure if an employee needs to assert an accommodation need? They need to say that they're in high-risk groups, right? It's not something we can ever go fishing for.
I see Janae unmuted, so Janae can answer that.
I can address it. We've actually developed a form that is voluntarily released from employees. It's a fillable form and it's going to be sent out all user tomorrow for high-risk categories. And we've made a separate form that's for childcare as well. But it has to be on a voluntary basis. We're not allowed to ask for that.
Can you discuss a little bit why it has to be on a voluntary basis?
Those are the rules under the ADA for accommodations.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you.
Okay, no one's talking. I have a question. Oh, Julie.
Go ahead, Rachel. Sorry.
Okay. So my daughter has a cousin. So I have a nephew who's in the same grade as she is, and just also in Evergreen, but in a different school. And they've gotten to the age where they've started comparing what their teacher does, what my teacher does. They're, different schools across town from each other. So this especially, kind of ramped up over distance learning 1.0, where their schools were doing vastly different things with how the learning was getting to them. So have we, 2.0, as I understand, is kind of trying to close those gaps. Is that right? And what are we doing? How are we closing that gap?
We're providing team time for schools. So the school process in the documents includes a collaborative planning document that teams will use. So a second grade team at Fisher's Landing would have and plan together as a team. Now in their plans, they also have student needs that they're going to be addressing individually. So while they have a structure that is similar, they also may do some tweaks based on the student needs of the school. But across the district, that's what we're trying to take out. So having common language around what is expected in live time, what's expected in asynchronous time. So we don't have one teacher doing a 3-hour Zoom and one doing a half hour, but what are those expectations? We're also providing guidance around how and when to meet the needs of groups of students, individual students, and small groups. So that guidance to teachers is much more clear about when and how should I use my live time, when and how should I use my asynchronous time. We're trying to take away that as much as possible while knowing teachers will still do some differences because that's their practice and they know their kids. So there will be small differences, but we're really trying to lean into the teams, that teams have a common structure, they have common times, we have common expectations, and that we're not going to go an entire week without having a similar structure. So the structures are going to be similar for all teachers across different grade levels. So as you saw in the schedules, elementary has a different expectation than middle and high, but it shouldn't be the vast differences that we saw in the spring.
Awesome. So the schedules that we saw, and let's say for elementary specifically, those are not like a minimum expectation, and our teachers could choose to do an hour and a half of live time, but that's what they're going to follow.
We want them to follow this. While elementary teachers haven't had necessarily bell schedules in the past, like we do want them to follow this. The entire live time might not be used for whole group live time. It may be, and this is what teachers will work out with their kids, of how much of whole group live time do I need? And then maybe I pull in individual groups or pop them out to breakout rooms. So within that, but they shouldn't go past, if it's an hour, they shouldn't be using 2 hours. And so that structure is going to be really important to keep that consistency.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there team teaching scenarios planned I was in an elementary school last year where 2 teachers managed 50 fifth graders. Or any of those scenarios or circumstances happening? Is there more looping going on in order to maintain relationships or less, or is that not something you can say at a district level?
We didn't intentionally plan for looping that I know of, but the team teaching, certainly, like we're talking to teams about maybe one team member makes one of the asynchronous videos. So they lean on each other, so they're not all having to do the same video 3 times, but that they can then share product, and then they have more time for feedback. So the team is going to be really important in this scenario, and teachers leaning on those teams. So I know some of those teachers that have teams, they would be in a team together, and then they have strengths that they can lean on one person or another.
And do we imagine that a lot of that work, the teachers working in teams, is going to be done remotely as well? Maybe as Zoom or Microsoft Teams, as opposed to in person?
Yeah, I mean, I think that depends on if staff are coming back in building and they're in groups of 5 or less, they could socially distance and meet in person in a small group with masks and distancing. Depending on who the structure of that team is, they could meet in a Meet or Zoom.
Okay. So you're leaving that up to the comfort level of the teachers at this point?
Mm-hmm.
We would follow the safety protocols, which would mean you're either going to Zoom, or if you did get together, it would be in the appropriate numbers and everybody was social distance with masks. That would be the direction.
Okay.
So when we get to that point where we bring some kids in small groups, will it be just an hour or so at a time? Is that kind of what we're thinking until it won't be a full day?
No.
Okay.
Correct.
No, it won't be a full day. We're looking at 2-hour chunks as we're thinking about what services do kids need. A lot of times it's not just academic, it's social, emotional. So will they have time to meet with their counselor? Would they have time to meet with 1 or more teachers, depending on what level they're in? Would they get a chance to go to the library and get a book? So we're thinking about like all those wraparound services, but just in 2-hour chunks.
And what we will do is, I think there will be students in certain situations that will come from the beginning, potentially special needs students. There may be some identified that will be in very early. We'll take the first few weeks to identify through the engagement teams through that process and build a schedule. And within that schedule, we'll also build in transportation so that we're looking at running a few routes, let's say for 2-3 routes in elementary, then that could loop onto a middle school, loop onto a high school, and we bring kids in that way. Allow us to not only transport our students a little bit, making sure that everybody has access, also making sure that we can get some kids in that way and they can pick up meals. They can do some of the the materials pickups that we're talking about. So, and then kind of starting, it also gives us the opportunity to go through our protocols with a very limited number of students and making sure that we've got everything with respect to the attestations and distancing when kids come to school and the patterns within the school. So it really allows us, and I've said this for a while, you have to start with 5 kids before you can get to a point where you feel comfortable with 8 or 10 or whatever those numbers are. And I really think it's important for our kids. I think one of the messages that came out of the summer school was just the kids being on site and the teachers being with the kids too. Just the kind of the joy of being with kids and people seeing that there is an opportunity and a path to a light at the end of the tunnel where kids are coming back. That, there's got to be hope, and we've got also, I think, give people coming into the buildings the comfort level that we do have the protocols in place and that we do have safety procedures in place, that they're going to be protected when they come to school. So it is important to have students in school as early as we possibly can for many, many reasons, and that's a lot to do with why we've chosen the path that we have.
Now, I guess the question I have in looking at the schedule, when we have teachers that are in the school building. Is the majority of the time that they're there, they're in their own classroom or their own office, depending on what position they hold, and not doing lots of interaction with other people throughout the day? How does that work?
Yeah, no, I don't think Julie will talk too, but that's exactly what we're talking. I mean, if I'm a first grade teacher, a third grade, whatever grade I'm in my classroom. That's not to say that there might not be interactions. If I've got kids in, certainly there would be, but there would potentially be interactions with other teachers in socially distanced with facial coverings. But basically, you are, and there are some situations where you may have in a normal school year where there's shared offices, but the expectation is that each one of these buildings, everyone is provided space with appropriate social distancing. And I'll let Julie add on to that. No, anything to add, or anybody want to add to that? But
yeah,
go ahead.
I'll add. We have built into the day time for teacher collaboration, and we would just go back to what Mike said of we would follow all the health and safety guidelines. So when teachers were adding an extra PLC time and team time for teachers to do all this team planning. Now the team planning in small groups can be done in a small group socially distanced. It's a half-hour set of time. There's our student engagement team, which all of these, while they can be done via Zoom or Google Meets, when we have the power of a small group in a socially distanced, appropriate place, there is ability to create services and get solutions done really quickly. So we talk about what we can provide kids and access to materials, access to information. The power of that group is really important.
Yeah, and I guess I would just, the last thing I would say is not necessarily at the schools, but when we closed in March, we didn't necessarily close the district offices. So we have actually had people working since March of 2020 and continue to work. Our offices are open at the district office, similar to the way the schools are opened, and we've had expectations around social distancing and I think that we've really tightened that up. I mean, when you come in now to the district office, you're either a visitor or an employee, you've got to sign in, you've got to go through the same protocols that occur. But the main thing is the mask wearing, the facial the face coverings, and the social distancing.
Mike, I got booted out there for just a second, so I may have missed some, but we do have a team going out right now with maintenance, reviewing each of those office areas to make sure that we have plexiglass dividers and appropriate signage, working with the site COVID contact to make sure that in those situations where people are working in a shared office, that there's proper protection in addition to the masks and the rest of the gear.
So do all our buildings have recirculating HVAC systems? There aren't any like space heater type things going on in any of the buildings?
They do. Our portables are probably the ones that they all have, yes, they all have fresh air. Our portables are a little bit more antiquated, but the portables also have operable windows, so windows that you can open up. Some of the older schools, Ellsworth is one, for example, that has a cabinet heater. But we are doing the same process with those schools as well in terms of flushing, opening outside air, opening the dampers up to maximize airflow.
In those HVAC systems, the air is always recirculated through a filter, true? And that you're talking about those MERV. Help me with the acronym again.
MERV 8 versus MERV 13. So most of our filters now are MERV 8. MERV 13s are just a higher efficiency, which is what we've gone to on our newer equipment. You can't always get that medium into the existing equipment, so changing them more often. And I think that's where the ASHRAE aligns with, ASHRAE is the American Society of Heating engineering and refrigerants engineers, that they align with the CDC in that, like what Mike was kind of alluding to before, all of them agree that the particles are passed from human to human. None of them are ruling out that it can't be transmitted through the HVAC system, but the best way to resolve that is through engineering controls, which is what we've done to maximize airflow, flushing, all of that.
I would add, in all the guidelines coming from OSPI, Department of Health, it's social distancing, it's facial coverings, you know, so those.
Wash your hands.
Wash your, yeah. I mean, I guess I'm not, there isn't anything in the OSPI. Those are the main things that we need to make sure that we're providing for, is the social distancing. And this is obviously the biggest, most significant issue with bringing kids back fully, is the size of the classrooms and having 20 to 30 kids in a classroom with appropriate social distancing. This hybrid is a different situation than fully coming back to school. And so it's going to be difficult without a vaccine or something of the like for us to get beyond a hybrid. Those are the conversations we've had with the county health department. But when I talk with the county health department, when I'm on these calls with Superintendent Reichdahl, it's social distancing, proper cleaning, it's facial coverings, and that's the science, right? I mean, that is the science. So we need to follow the protocols. We need to do everything we can precaution-wise, which with the HVAC systems. But the main thing that they call for is social distancing, facial coverings. Make sure you're keeping your hands clean, washing your hands, disinfect, these types of, cleaning the buildings, those kinds of things. And so we're really focusing on that.
Have you issued any directives? School staff occasionally make home visits. Are those off the table for the time being?
Clarissa's reaching up.
I am. No, I wouldn't say that they're off the table. What I would say though is that would be an eventual step, right? We wouldn't necessarily begin with that, but if we reach out to a family via the set teams and it is suggested, or we find that that's something that we need to do in order to have a student be engaged, it is something that is recommended to have happen. So yeah, it's not off the table. But again, same, procedures would be in place. We're not necessarily asking a teacher or counselor or anyone to walk into someone's home and stay there, but a home visit being making sure that they are as distant as possible, but being able to provide that social emotional support that they're there to give.
Okay.
One question on the small groups. Because we have to get organized, right? We need to figure out who our students are and the students that need support the most. When would we anticipate bringing students in, like the earliest? A few weeks? Is that what we're thinking?
Well, I think that we will have some kids in from the beginning in certain situations that are likely on IEPs. But the whole plan is that by the time we get to September 21st, we are bringing in groups of students. This is why September 21st is important. We will have students in the building, and we need to be able to see our students. And all students need to have the same access that have been identified. So that is the key, a key date. I think we're taking the first 2 weeks to start identifying, and then working in that third week with transportation, building routes, getting all that set up to make sure that we've got kids coming in starting the week of the 21st. But again, there will be, and Jay can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we plan on bringing in some students with IEPs as soon as possible. We all know and have received feedback from staff and parents and community members that there are students who, even though teachers demonstrate heroic efforts, paraeducators demonstrate heroic efforts, are not going to benefit from a remote learning system. And so we have worked with our teachers and some of our programs to organize to have these students in as soon as possible. We had an opportunity to bring in kids, some of our most significantly needy students through the ESY program. And we know that when you have groups of up to 5 people in a space, that these students are able to demonstrate appropriate safety measures. They understand wearing masks, they understand PPE. And by understand, it has to be taught, but when the routines are in place and the structures are put in place, the students can do it. And we've had successful programming that just ended. And so we'd like to continue it for those students who aren't going to benefit, and so want to move forward as quickly as we can.
And then another question I had, and I apologize for being late because it may have been addressed early in the presentation, but I really like the schedule. I wanted to throw that out there. I think it's a good mix of live and the on-demand, and enough break time to get away from the screen and do some things that are independent, both for staff and students. But the question is around the live sessions. And this maybe is a question for all the working parents out there that are going to struggle to get their kids when it's time for that live session, which I feel are so critical to this online learning and engaging with their classmates and with their teachers. So what happens if we miss those live sessions because there's just no way for these parents to help get their kids logged in?
So as much as we want all students to attend the live sessions, we know that's not always possible. So they'll be recorded and there will be directions for them to watch the recording. So unfortunately, we can't offer live sessions all through the hours that parents are available, but we'll have enough, I think, availability with recorded sessions that parents can still access the curriculum and the students can still access it, just won't be at the same time.
Our curriculum sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Rob.
Our curriculum vendors still extending the grace on copyright use in these recordings that they did in the spring?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes, and then we've chosen to use Google Meets for everything. So we've engaged more with Google. So we've had some more services, including now whatever grades are in the Google Classroom will be in Skyward, as we mentioned. So yeah, the Google Meets will have more added features. Some of those are coming in October. But yeah, it should be more robust, and it'll be K-12 with Google Meets as well.
And you remember, we've been kind of talking, originally we were looking at the possibility for having a hybrid situation in the fall, and then with the cases increasing, the board, the county decided to go with remote, but from the beginning, we've always offered the remote learning as an option, as long as the state was funding it, which the state is continuing to fund it. So even when we get to the point where there's more hybrid potential, we still will provide the option. We still have the ability to provide the option of the ongoing remote learning, which, I think another thing that's significantly different this fall from last spring is day one, when we did it, first of all, we had to do it overnight, literally a week. It took, we had a week to prepare. And the first thing that came out was grades don't matter. I mean, I didn't really say it that way, but your grades can't go backwards. You can improve your grade, but if you like your grade is what it is, and you can't have it go backwards. Well, that I'm not talking about, we're in the business of trying to grade kids hard, but the engagement is going to be much different in a more normal scenario where kids have an expectation to do the work and then interact with their teacher. We would get calls in the spring from parents, or we get emails. My son or my daughter has the grades they want to just go get a job. What should I do to keep them in school? Well, of course, we don't want kids to disengage. We wanted them, and we're encouraging that there's all kinds of learning opportunities. There's all these reasons, but the incentive wasn't there for kids to participate. And then when it started for 3 weeks, and so, it just was a much different situation. So you know, like I said many times, we have a lot of heroes in the district that have spent a lot of time creating these programs and creating the surveys to reach out to our staff, to reach out to our parents. And we have to say that teachers are our heroes as well. I mean, think about what they're working with respect to one day on I think it was a Friday, was like the last of when the governor closed things down. Matter of fact, I think it was March 13th. I remember the day. I know exactly where I was. And then the following, you know, we take a few snow days and then we come right back. And now all of a sudden I've got to learn how to do this a completely different way. We've had academic coaches in buildings that have helped our teachers learn how to use the technology. We have teacher librarians in our buildings helping teachers learn how to use the technology. We've had all kinds of staff coming together and working very hard to make this happen. And I say it, and I should say it every time. We don't exist as an organization if kids don't come to school. We are here to teach our kids, and we are here to keep our kids safe. And we can do that following the science and the safety protocols that we have. There are all kinds of studies out there now and things that we see of the impact on not being at school. And I don't think that's just from the perspective of the kids. Adults need to engage safely as well. So I really do feel like we've put a great program together, and I think we have a great staff, and we have a great opportunity to even increase our partnerships with our parents. We have a great opportunity to continue some equity training that it really probably would have taken us maybe 2-3 years to have happen throughout the district, and we're able to get through the equity training for our whole staff this year. We'll spend some money to do that, but it's the right thing to do. We've got things that we need to improve on, and there isn't time to sit and wait. If I've got kids in grade school myself, and they need to have the best effort from all of us as well. So we got to do the right thing. We got to do what's right for kids.
I appreciate all the thoughtful decision making and planning that's gone into this, and it's not been easy, I know, as we've been getting our bits and pieces of information throughout this summer, but I really do feel like we've got a good plan for our students, we have a good plan for our staff, and that we can make this work, and hopefully that it won't be a long time that we're in this mode, and that we'll be back all together in school, and we'll get to meet together, and it'll be nice. It'll be good.
And so I guess just to be explicit, or at least as plain spoken as I possibly can, you have presented this plan to the Department of Health, Dr. Melnick and the others, and gotten their, I won't say approval or assent because that responsibility rests with us, but have they been able to tell you that yes, this appears to match the recommendations and guidelines that the state and the county have given us for the number of cases?
We absolutely have, because we as a group went, and I think he's on the call again with us tomorrow, but a week ago, we went through this exact scenario and talked through the decision tree with Dr. Melnick, which kind of led the county not only to just, I mean, in high, moderate, and low, students on site are part of every one of those plans. That's the State Department of Health, that's the governor, that's Superintendent Reichdahl at OSPI, but it's really the Department of Health that drives that. So that's the State Department of Health. That was then, the conversation was with Dr. Melnick and Dr. Krager, who's the Cowlitz County appointed officer. He works through Dr. Melnick. Dr. Melnick actually represents Skamania County, Klickitat County, I believe, Clark County, Cowlitz County, Pacific County, and maybe Waukika. I don't know. I feel like my brother knows all the counties. I'm not as good with the counties, but he's got all of Southwest Washington. And we talked through the moderate, the high. And one of the significant things was around the testing. Do they have the testing capacity? Do they have the contact tracing capacity? And absolutely, he attested to the fact that they did have that. He was very, I mean, like I said, I mean, we basically created the path back to a hybrid model. He believes you start in a hybrid model at K-5. There's less transmission based on what he's saying. In elementary schools, greater potentially in secondary schools when you get to large numbers of kids together. But basically built the protocol where you look September 21st, where are we at? The 28th, the 5th of October, the 12th of October. And if you've had 4 weeks of 4 consecutive weeks of moderate level cases and you've plateaued or you're declining, in his professional opinion as the chief health person in public health in Southwest Washington, he felt that it was appropriate to go to a hybrid in that situation. I think I said it earlier though, he's not, I don't think he's comfortable going to full. A lot of it depends on the number of students you have that you can get comfortably in a classroom. I know Sue spent a lot of time looking at with the 6-foot social distancing, what is the number of students you could have? One of the things that we've also talked a lot about is our enrollment and on being uncertain exactly of what our enrollment's going to look like September 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And some of our kindergarten classes being extremely low. We budgeted for somewhere around 1,600 FTE. Maybe let's say we're at 850 to 900. And in that type of scenario, you may have kindergarten classes that have 6, 7, 8, 10 kids. Well, in those situations, you actually might have kindergarten class sizes small enough that you could have kids in more than just even the twice a week. And I'm not saying we're doing that, but I'm just saying we have to see what happens. Your question, Rob, is Dr. Melnick comfortable with this plan? And I would say unequivocally, he shared his comfort level with all of us last Wednesday.
So what I've heard is that we have a way to help our teachers and students at higher risk and accommodate them.
Correct.
We, well, it's not time for it, but we have a way to transport students safely and facilitate pickup and drop off according to protocols the health department recommends.
Correct.
We have a grouping strategy and protocol starting with elementary kids and the kids furthest from educational justice.
Per the decision tree and the guidelines from the governor and the Department of Health and OSPI, correct?
We have the promotion of hand washing, face coverings among students and staff, physical distancing. We talked about all of that. We have cleaning protocols and we have engineering changes to our buildings, and all of those together create the confidence of safety if everyone follows the guidelines.
Correct.
Okay. Then.
And it's the expectation that everyone follow the guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
And we have staff in buildings responsible for making sure that that happens.
I've seen those lists too. Okay. Then we're relying on the right experts. We're relying on the epidemiologists and the social scientists and the right people who say and agree that this is a doable thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you.
What
Anyone
about
else
that
have-
cool video from Dr. Fauci to Gila?
Yeah.
That was neat. Sorry, Julie.
Yeah, they have a new principal at Gila that reached out and made that happen. Oh, I'm sorry, Julie. I didn't notice you there.
You're such a naughty person. That was
No,
neat,
that was
though.
really that was really cool for him to do that. I agree.
Anyone have
Amy,
anything
just-
else?
Well, I was just going to say, Victoria, that was super. Amy, the new principal of Gila, surprised her staff with it. and brought them together in a meet and showed it to them. So I think it was a really nice way to show, one, the staff, like what they're doing to reach out, but the importance of their school and healthcare and everything else. So it was really exciting, and she kind of put it out there as a dream to get him to do, but the reality of him doing that and saying, you know, everything about the school and all, knowing even the pieces of it was really exciting. And yeah, Mike, I couldn't get it done, so the new principal got it done, which was exciting.
I'm sure you could have. I'm sure you could have, no doubt.
You got Senator Murray to visit.
That's true.
That's true.
And you probably had governors there, I would imagine.
Yeah, the
Couple
governor.
governors.
All kinds of people have been through this school.
That's true.
Well, anyone have anything else tonight?
I guess I wondered if a teacher, maybe this is a question for Brian, is there if a teacher or another staff member has to work from home and provide services from home in a high-risk group or something like that, is there I guess a connectivity standard that they need to be using that you published or could publish, so that the internet needs to be this fast or be this reliable, that kind of thing, and you need this equipment at home?
We don't have that standard published right now. Teachers have a Chromebook. The device at school actually is better. It's easier to record at school. That's one of the reasons we'd rather have staff at school. So, but no, we don't have a internet standard or the connectivity, like, you know, what the minimums. If it's some that we have had staff in the spring who did not have internet access, for example, and then they had to come in or figure that piece out.
Okay. Yeah, I should have included that in my big body of questions. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Yeah.
So we have a regularly scheduled board meeting next Tuesday where the budget will be adopted, and we will have any more updates, because I like to say that things change not only every day, but literally almost every hour of every day. I will say that I was on a Zoom call with, I think his name is, Sean Gregory, Peace Health. That's, Julie knows him, I believe. And we've set up a Zoom meeting, myself, Dr. Snell from Camas, Dr. Edwards from Clark College, and potentially Dr. Webb from Vancouver, and Mr. Merlino, next Tuesday to Zoom with staff and family members and talk about the program, answer any questions. Like, we'll have some questions dialed in ahead of us. I think that Peace Health is the largest employer in Southwest Washington. I think we're close to them, but I think they are the largest employer. So we have a great opportunity to get in front of some families and do a little bit of marketing of our program directly to folks. So that's next Tuesday. And I would also, I should share that there's another one of these forums that I was on that Channel 6 thing a week or so ago. And they're doing one on Channel 2 next Monday afternoon. I've been told it's between, I think, either 4 and 5 or 3:30 and 5. I said if it's not prime time, I'm not doing it. But of course, I'm kidding. So I'll have an opportunity to share our story next Monday. No, not next Monday, the 31st, I think it is. So that's great. We're trying to get in front of as many people as we can. I know that we've got building principals working. We've got building associate principals working hard. We got teachers working hard. We've got secretaries working. We got everybody working hard to try to reach out and make connections with parents. So we all at the district office need to do everything we can as well to make sure people understand what our program is, and we're doing everything we can to help people understand what we're offering and why we are a great option. So just want to let you know that too.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. If there's nothing else, I guess we will sign off, and then we'll see you all next Tuesday night.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see everyone.
All right, bye. Have a good night.
You
Bye.
too.